Blessings in Jesus' name. So today I got the most ridiculous email that I've ever received in my life, and I've received some ridiculous emails. The Court of Appeal in Ireland have claimed that both the DPP, Ireland, and the Attorney General are going about a civil appeal for a criminal matter. I received an email to that effect today. Now think about it for a moment. How can anybody appeal in a civil jurisdiction what is criminal by nature? You cannot civilly appeal a criminal conviction. What is wrong with these people? Have they lost their minds? Has the devil entered in and completely led them all astray? They're not even doing what is logical anymore. They're not even doing what's basic in law. How do they expect that they can fashion a civil appeal in a criminal case? They do realise how law works, don't they? If you get a conviction, it's because they reckon you've broken the law, which means that you're now in a criminal jurisdiction and no longer in a civil one. Now they claim that they're having a civil appeal of a criminal conviction. They've lost the plot. If you go onto my Facebook page, you'll see an email from what's supposed to be from the Attorney General. And they're claiming, it's even listed on courts.ie, as a civil appeal. They have lost the plot. First of all, this is what happens. First of all, Garda Síochána operate outside of their jurisdiction by bringing something called an adult behaviour warning, which hasn't gone through due process of court. Yet they claim it has the power of a cease and desist. Yet at the same time they claim you're not breaking the law. Now, then Gardaí, which have no jurisdiction in civil matters, attempt to summons me into a civil court where they shouldn't be, to represent people they've chosen to represent on the basis of favouritism and partiality, presuming that I'm guilty, so that they would even set themselves up to prosecute me. How can they prosecute me if they have to assume I'm innocent? How can they prosecute anybody in a civil court where they've no jurisdiction? It's absolutely a complete mockery of the entire judicial system in the Western world. It is a joke. It would be a joke, perhaps to some, but it is absolutely treasonous what they're doing. Now, just bear that in mind for a moment. That occurred, so that was why the testing of the constitutionality was brought before the High Court, and the High Court said these sections need to be tested against the Constitution because there's a chance that they're unconstitutional. They should have known straight away that they were unconstitutional. It should have been very, very simple, very cut and dry. Guards have no jurisdiction in civil matters, so we must remove these sections that allow them to operate in a civil jurisdiction. Because they must be removed, anything that came as a result of these sections must be immediately quashed, never to be visited again. They failed to do this. They didn't do that. Do you know what they did instead? They abandoned the testing of the constitutionality of sections 115 and 117 and gave no good reason for doing so, even though it was already listed in a High Court schedule. These people have lost the plot. I mean, this is harebrained doolally behaviour. It's absolutely unthinkable what they're doing. Now, moreover, then what did they do? Well, the High Court quashed my convictions. Then what did they do? The state appealed a month and 4 days late. Bear in mind now, the case that was before the High Court was a criminal matter because there were criminal convictions involved. Bear this in mind now. So they took it out of a civil jurisdiction, brought it into the district criminal court to give me convictions. I appealed it in the circuit criminal court, but it was adjourned on the basis that the High Court were going to test the constitutionality of those sections I've mentioned, 115 and 117 of the Criminal Justice Act 2006. So the High Court knew that a circuit court adjournment was granted on the basis that they were testing the constitutionality of those sections. In a criminal court now, and in the criminal High Court, they ruled that my convictions should be quashed. Now, what have they done? In some kind of a harebrained scheme, I don't know what they're doing. Are they sober? Are they drunk or on drugs, or what's going on? I don't know how they could possibly come to this kind of behaviour. But listen, this is what they've tried to do. They're now registering in the Court of Appeal a civil appeal, trying to overturn the quashing of my convictions. How can you enter in a civil appeal to turn over criminal convictions? They've lost the plot. This is so unlawful. It's a mockery of our Irish judiciary system. Of our Irish judicial system. It mocks the judiciary. Not only does it mock us, it mocks our ancestors. Not only does it mock our ancestors, it mocks every other country in Europe, every other country in the world. It totally undermines the presumption of innocence, impartiality, jurisdiction. You ask a guard on the street, he can tell you better than the High Court and the Court of Appeal in Ireland that guards have no jurisdiction in civil matters. Yet they're trying to have a civil appeal for a criminal case. Have they lost the plot? Did any of them pass their exams in law school? What are they doing? It's a completely harebrained scheme. It's like everybody got drunk or took acid and then said, let's do the most ridiculous thing we could ever think of doing. Let's have a civil appeal of a criminal conviction. Let's civilly appeal a criminal case. So now they're claiming that they're having a civil appeal in the Court of Appeal discussing criminal matters. No, sorry guys, you're not. You're absolutely not, because you haven't established jurisdiction. Now you're committing high treason. Because you must know that what you're doing is against the law. And you're doing it right out in the open now. You see how they've lost their marbles? And that just says that the devil's involved. Because the devil doesn't think straight. He's a lunatic. And his demons are complete psychopaths. Sociopaths. And they don't do what's normal. Actually, what they do is they try to think of what's the most ridiculous thing we can do right now. Let's do that. Except they've dug such a big hole for themselves to fall in now that they've lost. They're completely exposed in their folly. So they ridiculed in the wrong way. They tried to cause confusion, but they failed. I'm absolutely dumbfounded as to how human beings can behave in such a ridiculous fashion. And you know what it is? Because they're full of the devil. It just doesn't even make basic sense. First of all, what are guards doing in civil courts? Secondly, why are the High Court failing to test the constitutionality of sections that have been called before them to test and that they said they would test, and then abandoning doing it and not giving any reason? Thirdly, why are the Court of Appeal accepting appeals a month and 4 days late without any extension to appeal having been applied for? Fourthly, why are they appealing a criminal case in a civil court? It's like somebody picked a bunch of children and put them up there to run the place. I'm not exaggerating. It's like they have no previous experience of the court system. That's what it's like. I think your average drunk person would do a better job. I really do. So, needless to say, you can't appeal a criminal conviction in a civil court. The two jurisdictions are always separate. Do you understand now? So, I mean, they've lost this case. For that reason, it has to be thrown out. You can't have a civil appeal of a criminal case. It's totally harebrained. I mean, it's harebrained, guys. The appeal has to be thrown out. And they have to return to the testing of the constitutionality of Section 115 and 117. They've no grounds for appeal because, firstly, they appealed late. Secondly, they're trying to have an appeal in a civil court for a criminal matter. So that when the judge fails to establish jurisdiction, the whole case has to be thrown out. But only after that, only the appeal has to be thrown out. I mean, they're badly defeated now. They've nowhere to turn now. Because they can't lodge an appeal twice for the same case. I mean, what was the judge thinking? What is the court system thinking? What's it doing that they think they can actually have a civil appeal of a criminal case? Can you imagine something like this? Can you imagine you got caught drink driving? You go before the judge in the criminal justice courts, and then you try to lodge a civil appeal. What? That makes no sense. You can't have a civil matter and a criminal matter at the same time. If somebody has convictions, that means that they went through the criminal courts, because you can't be given convictions in a civil court. So the High Court was judicially reviewing the convictions, which meant the High Court was judicially reviewing a criminal case. And then they wanted to lodge a civil appeal for a criminal case. What is wrong with them? And they think that they're representing Ireland in doing that? The DPP Ireland and the Attorney General are lodging a civil appeal for a criminal case in the criminal justice courts. No, they're not. No, they're not. Because you can't. Anybody in law school will tell you that. So let's get this very straight. That appeal doesn't stand. It has to be thrown out by the court. It can't even be seen by the court. It can't even enter into the civil court. They simply don't have any jurisdiction. What were they thinking? A civil appeal for a criminal case. It just goes to show their misconduct all the way along culminates in that ridiculousness. So the appeal has to be thrown out. No judge can hear that. No judge can hear a civil appeal for a criminal case. That's ridiculous. Now they're just looking really silly. Let's be the first to ever turn over the quashing of a criminal conviction in the civil courts. How do they expect to get access to the Civil Court of Appeal on the basis of a criminal case in the High Court? I'm actually dumbfounded that such idiotic, ridiculous behaviour is actually being done by grown adults who've passed the bar in college. What is going on in this country? What is going on up there in the High Court? What is going on up there in the Court of Appeal? Our highest courts in Ireland. What is going on up there? They want to lodge a civil appeal for a criminal case. They hope to overturn criminal convictions in a civil court. Have they completely lost the plot altogether? So I'll say again, we have in Ireland we have two jurisdictions, civil and criminal. A civil appeal can never be entered in for a criminal case. They've been trying to blur the lines between criminal and civil all the way along here. Civil is one court, criminal is another. You can never appeal something criminal in a civil court, and you can never appeal something civil in a criminal court. They're two different jurisdictions. A conviction is as a result of a criminal court hearing, and it can never be appealed in a civil court. What are they doing? I'm sort of shocked. Actually speechless now. I'm speechless. What has become of this island? What has become of our courts? What has become of our government? What has become of this place? That they think they can appeal a criminal case in a civil court. It's absolutely ridiculous how the patience of our God to remain on his throne when they're up to that kind of stuff. The patience of the Lord. To watch them at that kind of stuff, it's unthinkable. They're crazy chickens. They've lost their marbles. Yeah, it's complete madness. It's absolute madness. What would the judge say? Okay, today we're here to hear the appeal of a criminal case in the civil court. No, you're not. No, you're not, Judge. You have no jurisdiction here. You've not established jurisdiction in the Court of Appeal, the Civil Court of Appeal. So the appeal is thrown out. Because it can't be re-entered. So obey the law, abide by your office, and throw it out. Because you've no jurisdiction. How do you hope to deal with criminal matters in a civil court? It's thrown out. I can tell you now it's thrown out. In Jesus' name. It's absolutely madness, guys. Absolutely doolally. Talk about La La Land. You might as well be talking to that. How do they expect? I'll ask the question again. How do they expect to lodge an appeal in a civil court to address criminal convictions? That just goes to show that they're totally losing the plot and are offending the laws of our state. What's the judge going to do? Here we are today in the civil court with Ireland and the Attorney General and the DPP, and what we're going to do is we're going to address criminal matters in a civil court. No, you're not. No, you're not. And because an appeal can't be lodged again, you can't lodge it a second time. And it's far too late. It was far too late when they lodged the appeal. Now it's even way, way far too late. That the appeal can't be lodged twice. They've lost badly here. They don't even. They won't get an audience. They won't get a hearing with the judge now. That's over. There'll be no appeal. I can tell you now there won't. That's done. It's finished. Madness. Absolute madness. You see what I'm talking about now? Not only did this whole thing start out with guards operating in a civil jurisdiction where they've no jurisdiction, not only did these legislations purport to give Gardaí jurisdiction where they've no jurisdiction, but now the Court of Appeal are accepting appeals, civil appeals, to deal with criminal cases. This is so fundamental, it's so rudimentary, that they should be sacked. This is like your ABCs of law. It's like going into maths class and the master tells you, your maths teacher says, I can't add 1 and 1. Take out your calculators. I can't add 2 plus 2. I don't know what 3 by 12 is. Do you? See my point? They hope that people are so ignorant that they won't even see what they're doing. It's over. There's no jurisdiction. There's no appeal. You can go on my Facebook page, and you'll see the email that came from the state, and it is in some state. But if you go and read that, you'll see what they're trying to do. They failed to establish jurisdiction. Imagine trying to... Is this really happening? Is this really happening? This is like a release Barabbas moment, where the most unthinkable thing was done. The craziness of them is apparent. It's the same crazy sort of shoot yourself in the foot mentality that saw them release Barabbas rather than the Lord. But death is suicidal. It's destroying itself. Its schemes are harebrained. The Bible says that God mocks at the schemes of the wicked. In one way I'm mocking, but in another I feel bad for the human beings that have been corrupted by those demons. I pity them that they're getting to behave in this manner. It's detestable, despicable, unthinkable, unworthy of our courts. It's a complete mockery of Western law, of any law. It's a mockery of society and rule of law. It's a mockery of law and order. It's a mockery of the fundamentals of law. It's a mockery of every law society, every law academy, everybody who's ever passed the bar. It's a mockery of the guards, the army, the state, the courts, the judges, and the Irish people. It's a complete mockery. And it must be thrown out. And the testing of section 115 and 117 must be carried out by way of law. Jesus is Lord.